Hello, my name is Tremaine Humans, and I'm here with Dina Lehman Kim, and we're here to give you more information about FY17 Ross NOFA, and hopefully this will serve you all better in applying for the Ross program. So I'm going to kick it off to Dina, who's going to talk about or give us an overview of Ross.
Thanks, Trey. So let's get started. The Ross program summary. Basically, Ross is designed to assist residents of public and Indian housing make progress towards both economic and housing self-sufficiency. The Ross funding is pretty straightforward. There are 3 budget line items. We fund a salary for the service coordinator, training and travel for the service coordinator, and administrative costs to run the program, and we'll go over all of these items. So what are the basics? The application deadline is October 23rd, 2017. Due by 11/59/59 on grants.gov. The total funding we have available is $35 million. The eligible applicants are public housing authorities, resident associations, and you have to have either locally incorporated nonprofit status or 501c3 status. Tribes or tribally designated housing authorities or entities, are also eligible, and 501c3 nonprofit organizations are also eligible, but they must be supported with a letter demonstrating this by one of the above organizations, so like a public housing authority, for example. So these are the eligible activities for a service coordinator, and we'll say this many times over the broadcast, but when you request funding, don't forget to request in your calculation fringe. Sometimes people just ask for the salary and they forget the fringe. The other thing we want to stress is to request only what you need. If you request more than what you need, you're really taking money away from other potential applicants. And as you saw earlier, we have $35 million, so it's a finite pot. So the role of the service coordinator. They do general case management, intake, assessment, education, and referral. They ensure affirmatively furthering fair housing compliance, and this is spelled out in the NOFA, so please be sure to read that. Create or work with a program coordinating committee. If you're familiar with the Family Self-Sufficiency Program, that's a requirement in that program, and so if your housing authority has an FSS program, we strongly encourage you to work with that committee or start one on your own, because those are very useful to a Ross program. And what they are basically is a group of local businesses and nonprofits that come together to support the work you're doing for your residents. The other role of a service coordinator is to monitor and track and report outcomes to HUD. So this year we have also created mandatory services that you have to coordinate. Those are child care services, adult basic education literacy classes, high school diploma and GED programs, job training skills, financial literacy, health care, and services for the elderly or disabled population that you might be serving. So there are other services that you can certainly coordinate. These are not mandatory, and this is just a few examples. Life skills training, after school programs, transportation, early childhood education, and wellness programs. So the next eligible expense and activities that you can use funding to pay for are administrative expenses. So this would include things like administrative staff support. So for example, a bookkeeper, local transportation by service coordinator, stipends for reasonable out-of-pocket expenses that are incurred by residents who are participating in your program, tracking and evaluation software, for example, office furniture, hardware and software to support residents' educational and professional needs. This would be not for an individual resident, but for a computer center, or if you have a neighborhood networks computer center, for that. So it's more for public use, but for the use of your program. Program outreach, printing, postage, utilities, and also lease and rental of space. We don't allow repairs or renovations to be funded with this money. Again, please request only what you think you need. The other budget line item, the third one, is training and travel, and we fund $2,000 a year per service coordinator that you get. A reminder that this is training and travel for the Ross position only, and it should be relevant and necessary. All training must be approved by the field office or your Office of Native American Programs. And you need to request the approval prior to incurring the cost. The reason we do that is so that we can be sure that it's a quality program that you're going to and that it's relevant to Ross. So, ineligible activities. So we don't allow direct services, salary of the FSS coordinator, it's another grant, so Ross should not be used for that purpose. Any costs associated with preparing your application. Funds awarded for the Ross program can only be used for the Ross program. Think of it like a nice little box. You can't use it for anything else. Grantees may not pay the service coordinator less than the salary or fringe amount that HUD grants you. We've had that problem in the past where applicants asked for the maximum but only paid a certain amount, a portion of the maximum, and so they had a lot of money left over. So please do not request more than what you need, and we will talk about salary comparables later in the broadcast. So another litmus test for you is to think about, if you're asking yourself what an ineligible activity might be as you undertake your program, is think about whether the activity you think about, you want to do is outside the scope and intent of this program. So the list that we have here on the screen is not exhaustive. If you have questions, feel free to contact your field office. So the next slide is application tips. So we say this every year. Please read the FY17 general section and the FY17 Ross NOFA carefully and thoroughly. So we want to help you avoid mistakes, and that's how you can do that. Start now. The application deadline, as we said, is October 23rd. It's never too early to start. And then we recommend that you not only review your application before you submit it, but get a second set of eyes to help you review it. If you're focusing on it so much, sometimes you can't see the forest from the trees. So now I'm going to turn it over to Trey, who will talk about changes from prior NOFAs.
Thank you, Dina. Like Dina said, I'm going to talk about changes from prior NOFAs. This is really important. The HUD 52768, which is the program application form for Ross, is now an electronic fillable form. So the old form was not electronic, and you had to maybe scan it and attach it, but this time it is an electronic fillable form, and when you download, Dina's going to talk about that process a little bit later of how you can get to the 52768, but you want to make sure that it is the electronic form that you're filling out. There's no longer a HUD 52769 form. The information that was on the HUD 52769, which was the match, is now on the 52768, and that match is still required for the Ross program. The form calculates that match for you in the form, so you do not have to put the actual percentage, but it will calculate once you're inputting. And salary comparability information is also included in the 52768. And so you will no longer need to update or attach, rather, a document with the salary comparability information. Other changes continue with salary comparability information. A minimum of 3 comparable positions in your local area must be submitted. Applicants may use the salary of their own staff in a comparable position for one of 3 salaries. Career One Stop Salary Finder can be used for comparable information. You can also use another online source for comparable information. Just want to make a note that you may find that in using an online resource that fringe benefits may not be a part of that online resource. You could then add another source for that fringe benefits portion of that comparable that you're working with to put in that section. And please put a point of contact for that fringe source in the NOFA, in the 52768. A salary request will be considered comparable if it does not exceed the average of the 3 salaries submitted for comparability purposes by more than 10%. Points of contact for salary comps may be included, except for info from Career One Stop or any other online resource. And like I mentioned, if you're using fringe benefits for your online resource, and the fringe benefits is not part of that online resource, wherever you're getting those fringe benefits from, that point of contact should be there. And you can see section 4B2C of the NOFA for more information. Resident associations set aside. Resident associations who avail themselves of the 25% set aside may only apply for one service coordinator. There is a limit to the number of service coordinators that you can apply for, so any combination of applicants may apply to serve a particular PHA or tribe. However, the total number of service coordinators serving a PHA tribal community cannot exceed 3. Please, please, please coordinate your applications if you know that there are more than one grantee or applicant that's going to apply for one PHA. Rental Assistance Demonstration, also known as RAD. Applicants may not apply to serve properties that have converted to RAD or that have received a RAD commitment to enter into housing assistance payment as of the deadline of this NOFA. So if you have any questions around RAD, please feel free to email us and we'll provide our contact information at the end of this webcast. Other changes. Threshold requirements. Past performance and capacity of applicant are no longer thresholds, they are program requirements. All other thresholds, such as match, letters of support, narratives, remain thresholds. Some thresholds are specific to the applicant type. A narrative requirement for tribes designated as high risk. Tribes that have been informed of performance deficiencies or designated as high risk must submit a narrative. And so please view section 5A1A3 for more information of what should be included in that narrative statement. What is different this year is that troubled PHAs will not need to submit a narrative statement. However, a contract administrator partnership agreement is required for those that are designated as troubled PHAs. Other changes, no third funding category. This was for new ROS positions. Unexpended balance threshold. This is a big one. Renewal applicants that have unexpended balance of 70% or more of their FY14 ROS grant will not be eligible for funding. Please make sure or check if you've fallen within that category before applying. Reduced awards. HUD reserves the right to adjust requested funding amounts downward based on demonstrated financial need, capacity, and performance. And one thing that you may enjoy that is a change from any previous year, which is no logic model. You do not need to submit a logic model with this application. But we'll provide more information of how we will be evaluating performance once you are, or if you're awarded ROS funds. So I'm going to turn it over to Dina, who's going to talk about definitions of renewal and new applicants.
Thanks, Trey. Okay, so renewal applicants are those who were funded under FY14 ROS, the FY14 ROS NOFA. Like Trey said, you may not have 70% or more of your FY14 grant remaining. And for people who aren't sure whether or not they're an FY14 grantee, your grant number, I created a fake one, but the format is exactly the same. The last 4 digits would be 14, and that's how you know if you're a fiscal year 14 grantee. New or other applicants are defined in the NOFA this way: an applicant that either never received ROS funding or was not awarded an FY14 grant. However, we expect to amend this definition to say that a new or other applicant is an applicant that has never received ROS funding or a previously awarded ROS grantee with no ROS funds remaining by the application deadline. And we'll talk more about how you can get an update. So the number of positions, so PHAs, tribes, and 501c3 nonprofits applying on their behalf can apply for up to 3 service coordinators depending on the number of units in your portfolio as of September 30th, 2016, and you can see the breakdown there. This is also in your NOFA. And we'd like to stress that every service coordinator that you hire has to serve at least 50 units every year. So site-based resident associations can apply for one service coordinator for the project that they represent. Site-based RAs may apply jointly if necessary to add up to at least 50 units. So let's say one resident association only represents 20 units. They'll need to partner with another resident association from another property, say, who represents other additional units, so you get up to that 50. And just want to remind you that only 3 site-based resident associations from any one PHA may be funded. So this is another thing to keep in mind. Resident associations with 501c3 status, if you want to be part of that 25% set aside, which we'll talk more about, you can only get one service coordinator. If you're not putting yourself in that category, then you can get up to 9 service coordinators if you are applying for or working with 3 different PHAs. Regardless of your nonprofit status, all resident associations need a contract administrator partnership agreement, or a CAPA. So nonprofits can apply in this in this scenario. One service coordinator per supporting resident association, up to 3 for one PHA, or up to 3 per PHA if the number of ACC NAHASDA assisted units supports the maximum. So that would equal up to 9 positions potentially, and that would include applying as a renewal for some grants, and maybe even a new grant for a new PHA that you haven't served before. Remember that a letter of support and other information according to the NOFA is required from every resident association or PHA or TDHE that a nonprofit intends to serve. And this is a threshold item. So just want to remind you, I know it sounds like we're beating a dead horse, but a HUD will fund a maximum of 3 service coordinator positions to any community. So if a PHA is applying and a resident association is applying and a nonprofit is applying to serve the same PHA community, only 3 positions will be funded total. And so if more than one application for the same project is received, the first to be chosen from the lottery will be awarded. So now I'm going to turn it over to Trey, who will talk about eligible participants.
Yes, so we're getting a lot of questions about who would be an eligible ROS participant, and so this is very important. All program participants must be residents of conventional public housing or NAHASDA assisted housing. Section 8 residents are not eligible to be served by this grant. This also includes Section 202, Section 811, Section 236. We just want to make a note that community events such as job fairs or health fairs can be open to the public. So for example, if you are doing a recruitment event around financial literacy, let's say that's a community event, you can have folks that may not be public housing residents to be in attendance at that event. However, a ROS participant must be a public housing resident or a NAHASDA assisted housing resident. Who will you serve? Use the 52768 to designate whether your service coordinator will be serving families and/or elderly disabled. If you have an EDSC service coordinator, you should only apply to serve families, or you risk losing your EDSC funding. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. So one, I think it's important to check with your senior leadership at your housing authorities to see if you have elderly disabled service coordinators. This is funding that comes out of, I believe it is the operating fund. The operating fund. And if you plan to serve those that are elderly and disabled or disabled at your housing authorities through the ROS coordinator program, and you have EDSC funds, you risk losing those funds. EDSC eligible PHAs may apply to serve families through the ROS Service Coordinator Grant with no impact on their EDSC funding. If serving elderly and/or disabled residents is proposed and the ROS Service Coordinator funding is granted, PHAs with EDSC will permanently give up their EDSC funding eligibility. So please check if you fall within that category. Information for renewal applicants. You may apply to serve the same projects. This is for renewal applicants. You may apply to serve the same projects, entirely different projects, or a mixture thereof. You can change your budget, number of service coordinators, population to be served, funding requests, etc. So you are not wedded to what you've had in your previous application. PHA, TDHEs, nonprofit applicants, if the number of ACC units or NAHASDA units has changed, you may be eligible for more service coordinator positions or less depending on unit count. And especially if you're going through RAD conversion, I think it's important to note if you can serve more or less depending on your public housing unit count. Renewal PHAs and RA applicants, resident association applicants that is, may not also submit applications under the new category. Information for resident associations. By statute, 25% of funds must go to qualified resident association applicants. So this is why we always encourage resident associations to apply, because this funding is set aside, does have a set aside of 25%. Site-based resident associations funded in 2014 can only apply to renew their 2014 grant. Site-based resident associations with older grants or no prior grants at all can apply for new funding, also part of the 25% set aside. Site-based resident associations with grants from 2015 or 2016 cannot apply for additional funding. Reminder, site-based resident associations can only apply for one service coordinator and must have nonprofit status. So I'm going to turn it over to Dina, who's going to talk about the funding structure.
Thanks, Trey. Okay, so we did talk about this a little bit. This is the funding per coordinator. So the salary is up to $70,000 per year in salary and fringe. That's the max that HUD will fund. Do not request the max if comparable positions in your local area do not support this salary. Remember, your salary comparability information must justify your salary request. We talked about what we consider to be comparable, and that is that the average of the three comparable salaries that you submit to us, your salary request cannot exceed the average of those three by 10%. So the next funding category is for admin expenses, $10,000 each year for a service coordinator. So that would be, if you're getting one service coordinator, that would be $30,000 total. But please do not request this amount if you don't think you'll need it. We really are trying to avoid grantees from sitting on extra funds so that we can make more awards. And again, $2,000 each year per service coordinator for training and travel. Okay, so how to access your application. This is important, especially for new applicants. So what you do is you go to grants.gov, and the easiest way for you to find the Ross NOFA and application package is by doing a search by the Catalog of Federal Domestic Assistance number, the CFDA number, which is 14.870, as you see on this slide. And you see the red arrow, it says search grants, so you'd click on that tab, and this is what you get when you click on that tab, and then you would type in 14.870 in that line there where it says CFDA, and then when you do that and you hit search, you'll come up to this page. You see that bottom arrow, that is the federal opportunity number. You click on that, and then you get to this page. There's a lot of clicking you have to do, sorry about that. But so this is the generic page for the Ross NOFA or application. So when you're here, then go to the package tab, which I'll show you in the next slide. See, there it is. So once you've clicked that, then you'll see what you see on this screen. And you would then click on either preview or apply, but more than likely you want to click on apply, because that's how you get to the application. So it asks you for one more thing before you actually get to the application. It asks you here to insert your email address in case you want to get updates. Now, we strongly recommend that you do this, because if there's a change for whatever reason in the NOFA or some other type of update, this would be the best way to find out as soon as that change is made, because you will receive an email notification. If you choose not to, you can do that as well, and then whatever your decision is, hit submit, and then this is what you get. So as a reminder, your full application is made up of two parts, the instructions and the package, and you can see where those two arrows are. So when you click on instructions, this is what you'll see. It's a zip file, basically. It has the NOFA, the general section. It has some of the generic forms and ROS forms that are not, the Adobe forms that I'll show you later. So what we recommend is that you create a folder that you could name it FY17 ROS Instructions Download, so you keep everything in one place. So this is what the application package looks like when you click on that button that I showed you a few slides back. And this is going to be the basis of your electronic part of your application, I guess. And if you scroll down, what I showed you here is the first part of the form. Then you scroll down, and then you see the other parts of the form. And this is where you get the 52768 that Trey was talking about, that is now a fillable form. You have to click that box in order for it to appear. And everything appears as one long, it looks like one long form, but there are many forms all together, but you just have to keep scrolling down. And they only appear if you check the boxes. So assembling your application, these are all, we're just going to go quickly over the forms that are required for your application. So the SF424 is the standard budget form. It's a required form, and it's in the application download. The HUD 2880 is the applicant recipient disclosure report. It's also there, and I'll walk you through how to fill it out. The HUD 2993 is the acknowledgement of application receipt. This is only for paper submissions, and if you need to submit via paper and not via the internet or grants.gov, you have to come to us 15 days before the application deadline to ask for a waiver and explain to us why you need that waiver. Then there's the HUD 2991, which is a certification of consistency with the consolidated plan. This is a curable form. Tribes would have to submit the equivalent, which is the 52752. Then there's the SFLLL, which is disclosure of lobbying activities. This is for applicants who have or plan to lobby using non-federal funds, and this is curable. The code of conduct is also required to be submitted. If you already have one on file with us, and there have been no changes to it or to your personnel, then you don't have to resubmit it. And you can check on www.hud.gov/grants and scroll all the way to the bottom. There's a link for code of conduct, and you can see whether or not yours is on our website. I do know that they updated it, and any code of conduct that's 6 years old or older, they have removed, so you probably want to resubmit. So these are other forms for your application. Program forms and documents. The 52753 is a certification of election of resident council board. This is a curable form, so this is for resident associations. The sample contract administrator partnership agreement is required for troubled PHAs and all resident associations, and it cannot be requested as part of a deficiency, so you've got to make sure that's part of your application submission. And the famous 52768, that's like the heart of your application. This is, again, in the application download, and you definitely need to submit that. So additional items that have to be part of your application. You need a letter of support. This is for nonprofits that are applying on behalf of a PHA, tribe, or resident association. A narrative is also required for new applicants and tribes that are designated as high risk, and your evidence of 501c3 status and 2016 information return. This is for new applicants. This is required. So I said I was going to talk a little bit about the 2880. So it's a little bit lengthy, this slide, sorry about that. But the answer to question 1 is, are you applying for assistance for a specific project or activity? The answer to that would be yes. The next question is, have you received or do you expect to receive assistance within the jurisdiction of the department HUD involving the project or activity in this application in excess of $200,000 during this fiscal year, which is the time frame there. You should only answer yes if you are requesting more than $200,000 for this grant for the first year of the grant. More than likely, most of you will be no. But if you answer yes to both of these questions, you must fill out parts 2 or 3. But many of you, or most of you, will only put in not applicable for parts 2 or 3. So now I'm going to turn it over to Trey to talk about the match commitment.
Yes. So we, you may have mentioned that, may have remembered that we mentioned that there is a match commitment for Ross. And although it may seem that this commitment may be a bit much, we want you to think creatively of how, or your partnerships that you have locally that could serve as this match as well. So all applicants must show that they have a 25% match. And like I said, this match will be represented in your 52768. The value of the match is documented in match letters kept on file. HUD may request to review them at the grant award, and this is really important that you have your MOUs on file because more than likely we will ask to see those match letters. The NOFA has very specific guidelines about the information that should be inside of the match letters. Match contributions are indicated on the HUD 52768. Match can be cash or in-kind and can be for services provided to participants in this program or for other program eligible activities. Match is certified by electronic signature. And so you may have a question where you may say, well, can I have a grant from another private donor or another agency that's state or local? Can this support or be a match? The answer is yes, if that grant allows for you to use that as a match. Assembling your application, the HUD 52768. You're going to use this form to tell us your applicant type, nonprofit status, type of resident association, site-based, non-site-based, name and project number and number of units to be served, type of population to be served, number of coordinators you propose to hire, the amount of money you are requesting for salaries, administrative costs and training costs, salary comparability information, match, and attaching all other required forms. So as you can see, the HUD 52768 is the important form because this is how we are going to determine your eligibility and funding recommendation. Assembling your 52768, we're going to continue with this. This is not a curable form. This form is the heart of your application. As I mentioned, make sure to complete it thoroughly. For the match, you can list more than one service provider for a particular need and match contribution. And it's great that we see also those other service providers that you have there and what need they're providing or addressing. The value of match entry must be the value for 3 years. Applicants can contribute to the match. The match must be equal to 25% of the total grant amount you request from HUD. So just to talk a little bit about the 52768, the Ross funding form. So as you can see there for part 1, general information, you have the applicant type and also the lead applicant, or for joint applicants, the information that should be provided there. You see in part 2, the first column, service coordinator positions required. You see that there's 3 positions because you can request up to 3 positions depending on your applicant type. Please pay attention to column 2, projects to be served. So for the first column, or for the first row rather, you'll see additional projects that you can add there. So it's really important if you're adding more than one project that you're clicking that additional project tab so that you can add that project number there. You'll then say whether you're serving family, elderly, or both. And for each year, you'll be putting in the salary and fringe, the admin costs, and the training costs. So it should be simple. And the good thing about this electronic form is that at the bottom where you see total number of units and total grant requested, it'll be calculating what you're putting in the table above. The salary I'm sorry, I'm getting a little tongue-tied. Salary comparability information. So as you see here, you must have 3 comparable salaries, and you may see only 2 in the screen above, but there is 3. Sorry, we couldn't fit the 3rd one into this screen. So make sure that you fill out this information. As mentioned, if you're using an online source, the point of contact is not necessarily needed. However, it is important if you're using Fringe for that online resource, and that online resource does not have Fringe, that you include the point of contact for that Fringe source. The Ross funding form. Continuing with the match. So this is where you're going to be inputting your match information for the 52768. So you'll put the needs of the residents. So for example, if the need is child care services, the service to be provided, so that can be this provider will be providing after school care for children 3 to 8. So that's what would be described there. The source of the match, so that could be whoever that provider is and the value of the match. And as we stated that the total match, the form actually calculates the match for you so you can see where you are and if you met that 25% match requirement.
Trey, can I just add that
Yep.
the value of the match has to be the total for the 3 years, right?
Yes.
Okay.
It has to be the total for the 3 years.
Okay.
And I'm going to turn it over to Dina for assembling your application for narrative for past performance.
Perfect, thank you. Okay, so as we've mentioned before, the narrative is required only for new applicants or for tribes designated as high risk. So if you don't include one and you fall in those categories, your application will be ineligible. There are 5 key areas to respond to. I'll talk about those in the next slide. But read the NOFA to make sure you're addressing all requested information. If you fail one of the items, you don't address it as we've asked you to, you will not be eligible. And follow the precise format guidelines for the narrative, double space, Times New Roman, font size 12 with 1-inch margins, because HUD will stop reading after page 10. And if you have your key information on page 12, we won't know. So this is what the narrative asks for. How you will meet the affirmatively furthering fair housing requirement. This is not applicable to tribes though, excuse me. And then we want to know about your past experience within the past 5 years. Your past experience managing multi-year grants that serve public housing or other low-income residents, providing supportive services to public housing or low-income residents, data collection, and your success in coordinating employment, education, and health services for this type of population. So for renewals who don't have to submit a narrative, past performance will be evaluated based on your submission of logic model data that was submitted to HUD. We're going to look at whether you've met at least 50% of your goals on the FY14 logic models. And what we're going to do is we're going to base the calculations on the cumulative total for the years that you have completed in your grant. Some grantees may have started a little bit late. The other thing we're going to look at here is the timeliness of your logic model submissions during the term of the grant. So as we say here, per the NOFA, failure of both of these items will render your application ineligible. So let me see. Trey, I think you're going to talk about the lottery.
The lottery. And so this may be important to all of you guys of how we're determining or how we're ranking or how we're setting the funding for those who are now considered eligible for funding. So resident associations, which we talked about, will have that 25% set aside. If the 25% set aside is exceeded, resident associations lottery will be conducted. The lottery number 1 for renewal applicants, if funding remains continued, it will continue to lottery number 2. And then lottery number 2 is for new and other applicants. Only applicants who pass the threshold and program requirements will be entered into the lottery that corresponds to the applicant type. 25% set aside for resident associations, renewals, or new applicants. How does the lottery work? Resident association applicants, by statute, 25% of all ROS funds must be awarded to qualified resident associations, and we talked about that. So if a lottery is held for a 25% resident association set aside, resident associations applications not selected will be placed in the appropriate renewal or new other category or lottery. If more than 3 resident associations applications are received from the same PHA that are deemed eligible for a lottery, the first 3 chosen will be funded. Continuing with how does the lottery work, renewal applicants after the resident association 25% set aside category is funded, qualified applicants with FY14 ROS grants will be funded by lottery. Then new or other applicants, once all qualified resident association applicants and renewal applicants are funded, applicants that have no prior ROS grants or no open ROS grants with funds remaining will be funded on a lottery basis. So Dina's going to talk about the first time registration process.
So this is a little bit dense, thanks Trey, and a little cumbersome, but it's, I think, worth going through. So the first step is to obtain your DUNS number, and you can go to the website there. You can also go to the HUD website, hud.gov/grants, and it'll give you information about this as well. That's step 1 is getting your DUNS number, and it's free. Step 2 is to register with sam.gov to designate your e-business point of contact. We recommend designating an alternate e-business point of contact so that there are 2 names in the system in case one person is out. When creating or updating your profile at SAM, identify the e-business point of contact. The person completing the profile must create a 9-digit marketing partner ID number, or MPIN. The MPIN is mandatory for SAM registrants and contains 9 characters. I won't read all of this. This presentation is going to be recorded, and we'll put the slides up as well, but I'll walk you through the next steps. So the person submitting the application through grants.gov is called the Authorized Organization Representative, or AOR. The AOR must register with grants.gov using the organization's DUNS number. When the AOR registers with grants.gov, the e-business point of contact receives an email. The e-business point of contact then must log into grants.gov using DUNS and their MPIN to confirm that the AOR is authorized to submit an application on behalf of the organization. The AOR will receive an email from grants.gov informing them when they've been approved. An organization may have more than one AOR. And we're stressing here that you shouldn't wait for the email from grants.gov, but you should log in and check the status of your registration, and the status must say authorized. Everyone in this process should add @grants.gov, @sam.gov, and @fsd.gov to their safe senders list in their email program so that these emails don't get sent to your junk file.
And Dina, can I add something about AOR?
Yeah.
That we make sure that those AORs are in fact your authorizing officials at your organization, and may not be a grant writer that you may be using as a consultant, but it is that authorizing official at your organization.
So they have to be part of your organization?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, thank you for that. So if you haven't started registering, doing this process that I just described, do it immediately, please, because it can take several weeks. If your AOR has left since last year, for example, follow registration steps 4 through 6 to have a new one registered and authorized to submit your application. We've experienced incomplete registration problems in the past, which have resulted in applicants not receiving funding. So don't rely on the automatic email notifications. Proactively log in to verify the success of each step of the registration process. There are video tutorials that are available on grants.gov, and when you go there, click on the Applicants tab, and be sure to select registering as an organization applicant for the videos that are most relevant to you. So for the renewal, so let's say you've already registered before, you registered last year, you have to register in SAM every year, because the SAM registration is active only for a year, so it expires after a year. The SAM registrant should be notified by email 60, 30, or 15 days prior to the registration expiration. And you can go to sam.gov for more information. If you have problems with SAM, please call the Federal Service Desk at this number. There is no fee at all to register or renew. And again, one last helpful hint: if you changed your e-business point of contact in the SAM registration, make sure that the new e-business point of contact has also granted permission to the person submitting the application to be the AOR. I know it's a mouthful, but you can always go back and read these slides again if you need to. So these are other useful HUD links. If you go to hud.gov/grants, which we've mentioned already, it includes information about the registration process, also grants management. So once you've been awarded, how do you manage your grant? What are the requirements? Other grant regulations and policies, as well as the funding opportunities. So you'll find the Ross NOFA and this webcast later on the Ross NOFA page. The link is here. I know it's a long link, but you can get there from the hud.gov/grants URL. But on the Ross page, you'll find the NOFA, the general section. This webcast will be posted there, and other information that might be issued later on. So I did want to show you what SAM looks like, because in the past there was an imposter site, let's call it that. So this is SAM. Look for the Uncle Sam, hat. And again, you will not be asked for any kind of money to register. In the past, this has happened. So this is not sam.gov. I don't know that this is still online, but it was, and people were registering here and were being asked for money. But anytime the government is asking you to register for applying for grants, it is free. So this is how you can find us. You can email us at ross-pih@hud.gov. If you don't get an answer within a day or two, maybe a little bit more, but we try to answer as fast as we can, you can contact our supervisor, Ronald Ashford. I'm sure many of you know him. And we appreciate your participation.
Good luck in applying for Ross.
Good luck, and thanks for watching.
Look forward to working with you.
Bye.